Hey guys, tonight we journey back to a land of fjords, fish guts, and a very smoky misunderstanding. You're standing in a Viking turf hut, squinting through sunlight slanting in from a single high window. The air is damp with wood smoke, your eyes sting, and your arms are coated in flour that refuses to leave, no matter how much you shake them. Because tonight, you're not raiding. You're not pillaging. You're trying to bake a loaf of bread. And you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've never baked before. Not really. You've eaten plenty of hard rye discs and barley mush. And once, that weird pancake made on a shield over open fire. But your friend Sigrid brought some foreign flour back from a trade voyage. And something about the way she described spongy bread lit up a reckless corner of your brain. So here you are kneading this sticky mass like it insulted your grandmother, praying it'll puff into something impressive. The recipe, if you can even call it that, was carved into a flat bit of driftwood and handed over by a Danish merchant with a knowing smirk. And you're starting to understand why. You try your best. Really, you do. You pile turf over the fire pit, thinking the heat will trap better. You use thick logs, damp ones even, because that's what's left. The smoke billows in, choking and swirling like it's judging your choices. You rub ash from your eyes and shove the dough into a shallow clay bowl, nestling it right into the edge of the fire. Then, because your eyes are burning and your feet are tired and you've been awake since before the goats, you decide to lie down, just for a moment. You curl up near the door, where the air's a bit fresher, wrapping a scratchy wool cloak around yourself. The sound of fire crackling mixes with the steady drip of melted frost water from the beams. Sleep hits you like a warhammer. You don't dream of bread. You dream of running through thick smoke, past angry villagers, cradling a loaf that's crumbling into charcoal in your hands. In your dream, the bread speaks. It tells you to go back to raiding, or maybe fishing. When you wake, it's dusk. The hut is sweltering. There's a strange smell, bitter and sharp, like burned pine pitch and something else you can't place. The fire is nearly out. The logs are glowing red, their edges collapsed into blackened powder. And nestled right at the center, where your proud dough once sat, is something. It's not bread. It's not food. It looks like a lump of black stone, hardened, hollow-looking. There are cracks along the top where the heat split it open, revealing a strangely smooth interior. You poke it. It doesn't squish. It clinks. And because you're still half asleep and moderately panicked, your first thought is this cursed? Your second thought is, do I still have to eat it? Spoiler, you do not. You pry it loose with a stick, wincing as it crumbles at one side. It's dry like old driftwood, but darker, almost shiny in places. You sniff it. Definitely not edible. Definitely not bread. You made something else entirely. And you're not sure if that's a win or a catastrophic culinary failure. Still, you carry it outside. The cool air hits your face like a slap, and the stars are starting to show above the hills. You place the lump on a flat stone, sit back, and stare at it. The goats wander by. One sniffs the lump, sneezes, and walks off in disgust. Historically speaking, Vikings weren't known for baking soft, fluffy bread. Most of it was more like hardtack or flatbreads, practical, rough, and dense enough to double as weaponry. But there's some evidence that as trade expanded, so did curiosity. You, tonight, are the curious type. And now you've got this strange, crumbly, blackened mass and czar. No idea what it's good for. Sigrid finds you about an hour later, chewing on a twig and still staring at your ruined experiment like it might come alive and apologize. She squints at it, then says, "Looks like what the smith uses to start his forge." You blink. That guy? The one who speaks only in grunts and once threw a goat jaw at someone for walking too close to his bellows? She nods. Charcoal. He burns it, gets hotter than logs. You try to say charcoal, but ash clogs your throat and you end up coughing like a dying seal. You didn't mean to invent anything. You just wanted bread. But now, staring at this crumbling, dark lump of not food, your mind begins to spark. What if it was useful? What if this mess, this smoky mistake, had a purpose? Historians still argue whether the Norse deliberately produced charcoal in domestic settings, or if it was strictly the domain of metallurgists and smiths. Some believe small batches, like the one you've made by accident, were stumbled upon by amateurs. Others think that's romantic nonsense, and Vikings were far too practical for such happy accidents. You, lying flat on your back in the chill grass beside your nut loaf, think maybe both can be true. After all, you just wanted dinner. And instead, you might have made something people will burn for centuries. The next morning, the smell of smoke still clings to your tunic, your hair, your eyebrows, basically anything that didn't flee the hut in time. You're trudging toward the longhouse with the blackened lump tucked under one arm like some awkward, ashy trophy. You feel like a child bringing home a misshapen clay cup, unsure whether you'll get a pat on the back or a confused stare. You get both. As you duck through the low wooden entrance, the warmth of the hearth hits you. A few heads turn. One of the older warriors grunts a greeting. Someone else mutters something about earning breakfast again. You walk straight to the low table near the fire, set your lump down with a soft clack, and announce, "I made bread." There's silence. Then, laughter deep, belly-aching laughter that makes someone spill mead into their own lap. Gunnar, the chieftain, wipes his eyes and gasps. Looks more like you baked a rock. You cross your arms. Maybe it's special. He leans over the lump and sniffs, immediately recoils. Special in the sense that it smells like regret. A few of the women lean in closer. One picks it up, turns it over. It's dry all the way through. No soggy middle. That's hard to do. You nod solemnly, pretending you meant for that to happen. Someone suggests using it as a weapon. Someone else says it'd make a good anchor. You're about to accept that this is your life, now forever known as the one who invented inedible bread, when a quiet voice cuts through the din. "Give it here," says Rolf, the smith. You blink. Rolf rarely speaks in full sentences. Mostly it's grunts and the occasional hiss when he burns his fingers. But now he's eyeing the lump like it owes him money. You hand it over. He turns it in his hands, tapping it with one calloused finger. Feels like the charcoal from the bogwood we use. You blink again? Charcoal? He nods. Fuel for the forge. It burns hot. Cleaner than normal wood. You make this? You hesitate. Kind of, I was trying to bake. This earns a snort from the corner. But Rolf doesn't laugh. He examines it closely, then finally says, "You do this again. I want to see it." You're stunned. One moment, your culinary failure was a punchline. The next, it's being considered for science, smithing, sorcery. Historians agree that charcoal was used extensively in Viking Age metallurgy, but where and how it was produced remains debated. There's evidence of large-scale charcoal pits in Sweden and Denmark, but smaller domestic batches, accidental or experimental, aren't as well documented. Some believe wives and household workers made small quantities in hearths for drying fish or boiling salt water, and discovered its forge-friendly properties by accident. Others argue only the smiths would have had reason to understand charcoal's value. You, apparently, are now part of that argument. Later that day, you drag a log over near the forge and sit on it like a sulking raven. Your lump sits beside Rolf's proper charcoal. His is uniform, nearly perfect. Yours is lumpy, uneven, with cracked edges like overcooked porridge. But it's dry, and when he sets it near the edge of the fire, it glows just the same. You try to act unimpressed. Secretly, you're thrilled. The forge roars hotter than you've ever felt. Rolf feeds it more charcoal, some his, some yours, and begins to work a chunk of iron with that terrifying hammer he swings like it's a feather. Sparks fly. The air fills with a deep, pulsing heat. You squint, mesmerized. He doesn't say much. Occasionally, he nods or grunts or shouts something about airflow. You nod back, as if you understand anything. Your contribution, you tell yourself, is foundational. You provided the fuel, the magic, the burnt bread. Sigrid shows up again, biting an apple and smirking. "So, you're a baker now and a blacksmith?" You shrug. "I prefer the term combustion artisan." She rolls her eyes, but stays to watch. The air smells of hot metal and soot, but there's something thrilling about it, like you've become part of something ancient and loud and slightly dangerous. The hammer strikes a ring like drums. "Don't get used to it," she says. "One decent accident doesn't make you a legend." Fair. But you notice Rolf setting your lumpy charcoal aside, not to discard it, but to save it. He keeps glancing at it, occasionally reaching over to test how it catches. Maybe it's not the best, but it's not useless either. And in this village, not being useless is pretty high praise. By nightfall, you're back at your hut, the air still tinged with smoke. The goats are asleep. Your fingers smell like fire. And inside the corner of your mind, something's shifted. You think about how you covered the fire with turf, how the lack of airflow changed the burn. You remember the smell sweet almost. You wonder, could you do it again? On purpose? You reach for the driftwood recipe board and scratch out the word bread. You replace it with hot rock log. You'll work on the branding later. Outside, the moon shines through smoke-streaked clouds. The embers in your fire pit glow softly, still crackling with yesterday's confusion. And on a flat stone by the door, your blackened lump waits. It doesn't look like much, but you're starting to suspect it might be the start of something. By the end of the week, you've stopped pretending you were ever trying to make bread. Now, you're deliberately stuffing damp logs into half-smothered pits and checking the results like a raven inspecting shiny things. There's a certain pride to it now. You've become the village's unofficial charcoal whisperer. It's not glamorous. You smell like a chimney. Your hair is permanently singed on the left side. But every time you crack open a cooled pile, and find that velvety black, weightless core, you feel oddly accomplished. People start noticing. Not in a flattering way, mind you. More like, there goes the one who burns food for fun. But the Smiths, they're curious. They start drifting by, casually, under the pretense of needing firewood or just checking for goats. But their eyes always go to your charcoal piles. One even offers you a smoked herring in exchange for a few chunks. You barter naturally. You're not a monster. In return, you ask questions. So, why does the forge need this stuff? You ask one night, sitting cross-legged near the edge of Rolf's workspace. He grunts. The wood's too wet, smoky, doesn't get hot enough. Hot for what? He gestures vaguely at a glowing ingot, making that bend. You squint. So charcoal's like fire, but better? He gives a shrug that means kind of, now stop talking. You chew on this as he works. Sparks burst around him like tiny shooting stars, and you realize that for all their gruffness, the Smiths are deeply, quietly fascinated by fire. One day, one of the younger Smiths, Einar, breaks the code of silence. He sidles up beside you with a grimy leather pouch and mutters, "You know they make charcoal on purpose, right?" You blink. "Yes, I do now." "They've got this place in the woods," he says. "The pit is covered with turf. Burn it slowly. Starve the flame. Come out like your stuff." He glances around like he's shared state secrets. Then adds, "Only they don't use bread dough." You resist the urge to throw a stick at him. What he's describing is, essentially, a primitive charcoal kiln covered burns where the wood is smothered just enough to carbonize without bursting into flame. Historians recognize this method across ancient cultures, and it's likely Viking societies used variations of it, especially where ironwork was common. Whether the knowledge was passed down in whispers or discovered by accident remains murky. But clearly, some people knew. And you? You're starting to catch up. You experiment with wood types, birch, alder, even driftwood from the shore. Birch gives you a silky, almost silver-black charcoal that cracks softly in your hands. Driftwood? Well, it mostly just smells like seaweed and shame. You notice patterns. Too much air, and it turns to ash. Not enough, and the logs stay soggy. It becomes a balancing act to feed the fire without letting it eat everything. At some point, Rolf grunts his approval loud enough for others to hear. This is roughly equivalent to being knighted. You're still an oddity, but now you're a useful oddity. Then comes the weird part. One morning, you find a stranger poking around your fire pit. He's tall, thin, with a tunic far too clean for someone who sleeps near goats. His beard is trimmed. His boots are stitched in neat little crosses. You don't trust him immediately. "Interesting technique," he says, smiling like he invented air. You grunt. "Trying something." "Your piles," he nods. "They resemble what I saw in Francia. Small scale, but effective." You eye him. "You're from the south?" He bows slightly. "Brother Ulrich, I record things." "Fantastic. A monk." You consider the implications. Either this man wants to convert you, judge you, or borrow your burnt wood for reasons he won't explain. He continues, "Charcoal like this, when dense, can reach temperatures high enough to melt even poor quality ore, with the right bellows." You try to look unimpressed, but this is new information. You've never thought about the quality of ore. You've only just stopped burning dinner. Still, you nod. "Bellows?" He gestures like it's obvious. "Air pump. Makes the fire breathe." This is another thread. You tug on it. Soon you're spending more time watching how air moves, how wind creeps under turf, how bellows make flames snap to attention. You build a crude funnel for Mark and test if it helps. It sort of works. Mostly it just sings your eyebrows again. Einer jokes you've become one of the fire folk, those weirdos who talk to smoke and claim to see messages in ash. You shrug. There are worse fates. You begin trading with the smiths regularly now. Charcoal for tools, charcoal for old blades. Sometimes charcoal just to see what happens when they hit it with a hammer. One day, you notice a bright orange glow at the heart of a forge. The smiths gather around it with unusual intensity. The metal inside is soft, pliable. One murmurs, "Never got it that hot before." They glance at your charcoal pile. It hits you slowly. You didn't just make a fuel. You made better fuel. Historians still argue whether charcoal innovation influenced Viking toolmaking, or if it was the other way around. Did better smithing demand better fuel? Or did someone like you trip into the future while trying to make soup bread? Either way, something has changed. And you, ash-covered and increasingly soot-colored, are right in the middle of it. The fire hisses louder than usual today. You squint through the rising heat as Rolf feeds another armful of your homemade charcoal into the forge. The coals bloom with a fierce orange light, pulsing like the heart of something alive and very annoyed. You're standing back, arms crossed, watching him test a new piece of bog iron. This one bends. Not breaks, bends. You hear it before you fully understand what it means. The low, excited murmur of the smiths gathered nearby. They're not a chatty group. Most of them communicate in grunts, shrugs, or the occasional mead-soaked yell when someone steps on their tools. But now, even they can't help themselves. Hotter than I've seen in months. Is that folding? No cracking along the spine. Your lumpen, inconsistent charcoal, your Shane loaf legacy, has done something even Rolf's best kilns struggled with. The iron is malleable, less brittle, easier to shape. The work is still grueling, still filthy and exhausting. But now, the metal listens. Rolf lets out one of his rare, deep-chested laughs. He holds up the half-shaped blade for everyone to see. Next time someone asks what feeds a forge, he says, tell them it's burnt bread dreams. You feel oddly proud and slightly threatened. That was your joke. As the blade cools, you wander closer, drawn to the ripples forming along the edge of the metal like waves on a frozen pond. That shimmer wasn't there before. You reach out to touch it, but Rolf swats your hand. Still hot. Right. You definitely weren't going to pet the molten steel like a dog. Not you. Not the person with a burn scar that looks like a snail from last week's bellows experiment. The others move on, but you linger. Because now, it's not just about the fire or the fuel. It's what comes from it. Historically, Viking smiths were masters of layering and forging soft iron into stronger composite blades. Not quite the folded steel of the East, but close in complexity. Many scholars believe some of these techniques evolved in response to better forge conditions, conditions made possible by denser, purer charcoal. Maybe not from you specifically, but someone like you, curious, clumsy, covered in soot. The night brings rain. You huddle under a half-sagging awning, trying to keep your newest batch of charcoal dry. Sigrid shows up again, this time with a smoked eel and a half-smile. You hear what Gunnar said? You shake your head. He's offering your charcoal to the next visiting trader. You blink. To sell? She nods. chewing thoughtfully. Says it burns cleaner, lighter, easier to carry than whole logs. You stare into the drizzle, suddenly seeing trade routes stretching out over the sea-blackened logs packed into boats, headed to far-off forges in Saxon lands or even Francia. Not for food, not for firewood, for making things. Your smudged little side project is growing legs. It gets weirder. The next week, a man from a neighboring village arrives, claiming his smith can't seem to get the right flame anymore. The locals told him about you, the charcoal one. He looks at your pile like it's enchanted. You half expect him to bow. Instead, he offers you a pair of boots and a small bag of amber in exchange for a sack of your best lumps. You say yes, obviously, then immediately begin constructing a larger kiln behind your hut, because apparently this is your life now. You even give the process a name, the slow burn. Sigrid says it sounds like something you'd name a dramatic song. You say that's exactly the point. More visitors come. Some bring ore. Some bring questions. One even tries to bring a goat to trade, but you politely decline charcoal is not worth being kicked in the knee. You try experimenting again. What if you stack the wood in a spiral? What if you cover it with seaweed? One time, you over-smother a batch, and it comes out brittle, flaky, useless. You sigh and sit by the remains, picking up one piece that's crumbled like pastry. You mutter, "Almost had it." A child watching from the bush whispers, "Are you talking to the fire?" You wave them off. Go chew bark or something. But later, you do talk to the fire, quietly, not because you expect answers, just because it feels like it's listening. There's something meditative about it now. The way smoke curls up through gaps in the turf, the sound of logs cracking as they surrender their shape. You've come to understand that charcoal isn't made by burning wood, it's made by not quite burning it. You trick the flame into patience. You coax it. One night, you lie back and stare at the stars, the scent of finished charcoal still clinging to your skin. You think about how many lives rely on fire cooks, potters, healers, warriors, farmers. But fire itself? It needs guidance. It needs a translator. You're starting to wonder if that's what you are now. Historians still debate whether Norse metallurgy was advanced by trade influence, homegrown genius, or sheer dumb luck. Some say charcoal refinement was a conscious evolution. Others say it was born of burned stew and too much free time. You lean toward both. After all, your legacy started with bad bread and a nap. And now, in the glow of this forge, you see something new forming, something strong, useful, and strange. It hums in the coals, it glints in the cooled metal, and it might just outlive you. By now, your name travels farther than you do. You hear it from passing traders, from smiths who claim they're using that special black fuel from the bread mistake, and even from a one-eyed skald who somehow turns your entire origin story into a tragic romance involving a ghost and a cursed oven. It's fine. You've heard worse. But the charcoal? That's real. That's spreading. Every few days, someone shows up to barter, sometimes for sacks of charcoal, sometimes just to see the process. They always expect something bigger, flashier, maybe a sacred ritual or a golden kill. But when they see your turf-covered pit, still slightly caved in at one side, their faces fall. This is it? One man scoffs, scratching his beard. Looks like a dirt pile had an accident. You nod. It's very elite dirt. They never laugh. But they do stay. They watch, and they ask questions. You start teaching not in any official way, just by talking while you work. Explaining how the wood needs to be just dry enough, how the airflow must be teased like an angry cat, how you listen for the pop of gases escaping the bark. Some try to write it down. One tries to chant it. You gently suggest they stop. Even Rolf grudgingly admits your charcoal burns longer. Good for long smelts, he says one evening, tossing in a handful and watching it shimmer. Less smoke, more heat. You figured out the air. You shrug. I just stopped trying to cook things. Word spreads beyond the fjords. Boats start arriving from stranger places, sleek, fast vessels with figures carved into the prow. The traders wear foreign cloaks, carry silver coins instead of salted fish, and speak with accents like syrup. One, a woman with rings on every finger, asks to buy all of your charcoal. You blink. All? She smiles. All, and a drawing of your fire pit, if you don't mind. You hesitate. This is your livelihood, now your legacy. But also, she has a ring shaped like a tiny hammer, and that feels like destiny. You accept. Soon after, something shifts. You're no longer just burning logs. Now you're fielding offers, inspecting wood quality from shipments, and arguing about kill insulation with someone who insists goat dung makes it authentically Viking. One day, a young monk arrives again, this one not as smug as Brother Ulrich, but equally curious. He pulls a small book from his satchel and opens to a page labeled Materials of Influence. You glance down. Your name is there, sort of. Anonymous northern artisan creator of high-density blackened fuel. Possibly female, possibly drunk. Source unclear. You stare. The monk clears his throat. It's a working theory. You sigh. Put me down as accidental inventor. That's accurate. He nods, scribbling. And your kill any plans to make a bigger one? Standardize the method? You stare into your fire. The pit hisses like it knows you're considering something dangerous. Because this is the question, isn't it? Do you grow? Do you build a proper kill with stone walls and a name like the Ember House? Do you hire workers? Set up trade routes? Or do you stay here with your goats, your soot-streaked hut, and your turf pile that still collapses if you sneeze near it? There's no easy answer. And that's what keeps you up at night. Historians still argue whether the shift to standardized charcoal production was driven by individuals or collectives by solo artisans like you or whole communities responding to increased demand for metal tools and weapons. Some even suggest it was a happy collision of trade, climate, and resource scarcity. You lean back, watching a coal glow deep red. Maybe it doesn't matter, because either way, you were part of it. Later that week, a boy from the next village comes running, cheeks red, shouting, "We need the black stuff. The forge is cold." You nod, grab a sack, and follow him over the hill. The forge is small, one of those that barely holds together in the rain, but the blacksmith is pacing, clearly frustrated. "Ore won't budge," he mutters. "Logs just smoke." You hand him a few lumps. "Try this?" He does. The forge lights, the heat rises, and the metal softens, just like that. You watch him work, silent. The boy grins. The smith mutters something you think is thank you, though it's hard to tell under the beard. On the walk back, the boy says, "My uncle says you're like a fire witch." You snort. "I'm more of a fire accident." He looks confused. Is that better or worse? You think about it. It's funnier. That night, you find yourself writing well, scratching on the back of the driftwood board that once held your bread recipe. You carve diagrams of your kill, symbols for airflow, a little warning near the edge that reads, "Don't sleep while burning again." You never planned for any of this. But now, people are melting ore with your charcoal. Ships carry it down the coast. Your name sort of is being scribbled into books. And your original bread lump? Rolf turned it into a knife handle. It's ugly, a little cracked, but surprisingly strong. He says it suits you. And for once, you agree. It's been years. The turf hut still stands, sort of. The roof leans more than it used to, and there's moss growing between the planks, but the fire pit inside is still dry and still hot. You sit beside it most mornings, turning logs in your hand, watching the slow build of smoke and steam. You no longer smell the smoke? It's part of you now. Down the hill, a younger smith sharpens blades with your charcoal. They're better than you ever managed. Faster, more confident, less likely to accidentally burn their boots off. You pretend not to be smug when people still ask you to light the first fire of the season. There's a strange comfort in the ritual now, like the hearth knows you better than anyone else. No one really talks about the bread anymore. Some think the story was made up, that no one would accidentally invent a better fuel while trying to make dinner. That charcoal was always part of the plan. You smile at that, because even though you've explained the truth 100 times through smoky laughs, over mead, during trading sessions with monks who keep asking if they can write your story down, you've come to accept that myths tend to stick better than facts. And frankly, the Viking who baked a rock and changed the world has a nice ring to it. The village has changed. There are more kilns now. Some belong to other families, other curious minds who watched you and decided to try their own way. One has a chimney. Another uses layered clay. They experiment with pine cones and peat moss, and once somehow, eel bones. You never ask. You just nod and offer advice when they want it, or just your silence when they don't. The blacksmiths have built a new forge at the edge of the river. It's wide, open to the sky, with 3 bellows running at once. They burn your charcoal daily, melt ore faster than before, forge stronger blades, trade farther. Someone once joked that your little lump of burnt dough set the whole world on fire. They weren't far off. You remember the first time you noticed it, when the forge glowed too bright for the room, when the sparks leapt higher than usual, when the metal didn't fight back as much, the subtle shift in heat and sound. You didn't know what it meant then, but you do now. It meant progress, even if it came dressed in flour and soot and embarrassment. Historians still argue whether Viking metallurgy advanced because of intentional scientific progress or simply from increased exposure to other cultures. Some claim charcoal's importance was overstated, just another tool, not a revolution. But others, especially those who study the subtle shifts in fuel quality across early medieval sites, say it's no coincidence that stronger tools appeared alongside better fuel. You sit with that thought, watching a wisp of smoke curl through the old roof beams. Your hands are calloused now, permanently etched with black streaks. You wear them like trophies. Visitors still come. They want to see the charcoal spot where it all started. You show them the old pit, the rocks still arranged around it, stained with years of fire. You tell them about the first time you over-smothered the logs, the smell, the mess. Some laugh. Some are disappointed. But one little girl barely up to your waist looks at the charred stones, then back at you, and asks, "Did it talk to you?" You grin, in a way, and she nods like that makes perfect sense. The seasons pass. Kilns rise, coals crackle, and iron shapes itself around your old idea. Your name fades slowly. People remember the method, not the person. They talk about Viking charcoal like it always existed, like it sprang from the earth, fully formed, clever and clean. That's fine. You never asked for statues. You just wanted to not burn dinner. Sometimes on cold nights, you sit beside the embers and think about all the things that were never meant to happen, but did, like bread turning into stone, like a mistake becoming a movement. And like you, smoky and tired, and more than a little singed, quietly changing the way fire burns. And now, as the coals begin to dim, and the village sleeps under a blanket of fog, you breathe in the softest curl of smoke from the hearth beside you. The fire no longer roars, it whispers. A faint, steady breath that hums low in your ears, like a lullaby made of ash and memory. You lean back, the wooden bench creaking under your weight, and listen to the stillness. The forge is quiet now. The tools are tucked away. And outside, the stars press gently against the sky, blinking down as if they too remember your strange little story. The wind carries the faintest scent of pine, soot, and something sweet, maybe old bread, finally forgiving you. In the distance, a nightbird calls once and then falls silent. Even the goats aren't stirring. The fire has changed everything, but it's soft now, restful, contained. You smile at it, this quiet companion, this accidental miracle. The same way you might smile at a friend too old to talk, but still close enough to understand you. You feel the weight of sleep settle into your bones. And as the smoke thins and the last red glow sinks into blackness, you let yourself drift into dreams, into warmth, into the calm certainty that even the strangest stories can leave a mark. You don't need to be remembered. You just need to rest. So close your eyes now, let the fire fade, and sleep.